right, we should be good now.
All right, so sorry for the delay and welcome everybody to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education Truth and Taxation hearing for December 8th of 2020. Our board members and members of the district administrative team are participating in a virtual meeting as there is currently a requirement on group sizes in an effort to limit the spread of COVID-19. Sorry, I started reading the wrong paragraph. As a public body, the Lake Bluff Board of Education is subject to the Illinois Open Meetings Act. Prior to this meeting, a public announcement was posted on our website announcing various participation options, including asking questions ahead of the meeting using a Google form. I will also add that you can participate by logging into our Zoom feed. While the requirements of the Open Meeting Act have been relaxed during the global pandemic, the members of the Board of Education take their responsibility as board members who are responsible to the public no less seriously. So Leanne, could you please call the roll?
Andy Duran.
Present.
Ann Hill.
Present.
Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlot, present. Julie Gottschall.
Present.
Richard Haig. Oh, sorry. John Morosen.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum. We can begin. Our first item is in the Truth and Taxation hearing is to open it up for public comment. Shelley, do we have anybody to make a public comment?
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. Okay. If anybody's watching and wants to make a public comment, you'll have an opportunity again at the end of this Truth and Taxation hearing. So the purpose of this meeting is to allow the public the opportunity to comment on the proposed tax levy and to use the Zoom feature or the Google document feature to make a comment to the board. So item 4, Mr. Khan will now introduce the levy to us.
Okay. As a reminder, just the district is only required to hold this truth and taxation hearing if the aggregate levy request is greater than 105% of the prior year's extension, not including debt service. However, we, as a matter of practice, to promote transparency, hold a truth and taxation hearing every year, even if it's not required. On November 10th, the board had passed a tentative levy resolution, which is required to be done at least 20 days prior to the certification of the final levy, which we will do tonight at the board meeting following this hearing. I'm just going to quickly go through the budget again, remind you about some terminology and go through the timeline, take you briefly through the calculation, talk about how our 5-year projections are impacted, and then give you the complete recommendation. So just as a reminder, we have a balanced budget this year, meaning we have no change in fund balance projected. We have about $17.5 million in operations and $2.1 million in debt service. The district is heavily reliant on property taxes for over 90% of our revenue. So the tax levy is our most important source of funding. The levy, which we're discussing tonight, is the amount of funds for operations that we are requesting. The extension is the amount, including debt service, that will actually be billed to taxpayers in April, or will be finalized in April and billed next June. And it is generally less than the amount levied. The two biggest parameters in calculating our tax levy are the value of all the property in the district that has been assessed at 1/3 the market value, and also equalized across townships and counties to ensure the fairness in assessment. And then also the growth in the consumer price index for all urban consumers from December to December of the prior year. As a reminder, we're subject to the property tax extension limitation law, which means we cannot ask existing taxpayers for more than a CPI increase in taxes up to 5%. We are however, allowed to tax new property. So if there's a lot of new property coming on the rolls, then we may see an increase in operating revenue greater than CPI or greater than 5%. The CPI that we'll be using in this year's calculation is 2.3%. And that was the growth in the CPI from December 2018 to December 2019. The EAV that's being used is calculated as of January 1st of 2020 this year, and it's based on the prior 3 years of sales data from 2017, 2018, and 2019. We are right about here in December, where we will file the tax levy by the last Tuesday. And then in March or April, the final tax rates will be established and tax bills will be sent out and taxes will be collected, half of it in June and half of it in September. And this will become the operating revenue for the 21-22 district's fiscal year. So just a reminder on how we calculate the taxes. We take our prior year's extension, which was allocated to all existing property owners. We grow it by CPI, and then we add new property. We were able to add the taxes from new property. Just looking at existing property, we take last year's extension to existing property grown by CPI. We reallocate it back to all the existing properties through the tax rate. Then the way we calculate the new property is to take that same tax rate and apply it to the value of the new property. So this year, the CPI will be 2.3%. That's the amount by which we will increase last year's extension. I'm estimating the increase or the change in existing property value to actually be a negative, almost 1%. And then when you add in the new property, it should be decreasing by less than 1%, by about 0.5%. The new property for next year is expected to be 3.2 million. This is in line with our historical results. Looking at our 5-year projections, these projections include a 1-year CPI for next year. Right now through October, we're running about 1.3%, and then 2% CPI thereafter, and $2.5 million of new property a year. It also contains $250,000 in capital spending to maintain our facilities. And as you can see with our contractual salary and benefit obligations, we will need to increase our revenue by CPI every year in order to maintain our fund balance where it is within the 30 to 50% of operating expenditures board policy. Just looking at our debt service, this again is not part of the extension, or I'm sorry, it's not part of the levy request that we're going to approve tonight, but it is extended by the county along with the operating taxes on the tax bill. And it is the county already knows how much to extend because they have our debt service schedule, and they will do that automatically. So tonight we'll be asking for a CPI increase, primarily because the long-term projections I think are a little bit riskier this year. There's an increased risk. One in the sense that we don't know yet how much COVID will end up costing the district, but I think the bigger risk is in probably our state revenue in the future going forward. They were able to maintain funding this year, but funding from other sources in the future is a little bit more uncertain than it has been in the past several years. Also, as we saw, in order to keep fund balance in the desired range, we need to keep growing our revenue at the pace of inflation in order to keep up with our expenses. We still need to be able to continue to adjust our facility needs. And because the tax revenue or the tax levy for next year is dependent on the tax levy for this year, asking for a CPI increase preserves our ability to raise tax revenue in the future. Just going through the numbers, you can see, again, CPI of 2.3%, expecting our EAV to be 689 million, which is a 0.5% decrease over the prior year, with 3.2 million of new property. So last year's extension was 15,802, grown by CPI. is 16.1 million. Again, we add in the taxes from new property at 100,000. And then we add a little bit of rounding error and extra cushion just to make sure we capture all that new property, which gets us to a operating levy request of $16.3 million, or an increase of 3.1%. And then the tax bills will include the debt service extension of $2.2 million for next year, which would be a total tax extension of $18.5 million, or a net increase of 2.8%. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
Just an observation that struck me as you went through that, Jay, because of my ongoing concern about fund balance. It appears as our debt service goes away about the same time that our fund balance begins to brush against the lower limit, 2027, 2020. So for future board members, which won't be me, they're going to be able to take advantage of that observation.
Yes. I also did want to point out that in the past several years, we've done a second resolution on the same night that we did the tax levy resolution, which is a resolution to increase our debt service extension base. So if I actually go back to within these numbers here is our non-referendum debt. And this non-referendum debt, you can see in the out years where it's not buried by our referendum debt, is growing at CPI. The county will only levy what we're levying this year for future years, and will not increase the extension. Sorry, the county will extend the same amount annually unless we, by resolution, increase it by CPI. And we've done that the last several years, and I'm recommending not to do it this year and not to do it in the near future because we have about a $200,000 debt service fund balance that can only be used to pay for debt service. So we can easily absorb that CPI increase within our existing debt service fund balance. So more information than you needed to know, but if you were wondering where that extra resolution was this year, we are not going to be doing it.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Can you put up the slide that shows our fund balance trend? And I apologize in advance because I didn't think to ask this question before the meeting. So if it's impossible to answer, just let me know. And otherwise, but if you can speculate, that would be helpful. If we did not take the CPI increase and we kept our tax levy the same as last year, how much quicker would that fund balance line dip below our lower limit? Any guess to that?
Well, you can see that, you can see where the increase in like the extent of the revenue increase. So when you get up to here, I think that it would go south pretty fast. Our operating revenue is 17 million. So, if we're growing it by 2% a year, $350,000 a year compounded. So we'd go down by 0.3 to 0.4 million dollars every year. So within
2 years,
2 years, we'd be below our 30%.
Mm-hmm. So it happens really quick, I guess is the point that I suspected.
Yeah, I mean, we have our salaries and benefits are the largest part of our expenditures, about 75%.
We're locked in.
And we're locked in to our salaries at 3% over the next, till 2024. And we're seeing greater health insurance inflation than we have in the past. I'm forecasting about 5% increase. This year it was close to 7%. In the past, it's been 2 or 3% because our cooperative has done a very good job of controlling costs. But some of that, a lot of it's related to prescription drug coverage. And with all the new innovations that are coming out, prescription drug prices are going up more rapidly.
But on a cash basis, we don't have the debt payment after 2027, the $2 million a year.
That's correct. That is also not part of our levy.
Levy, right.
That's extended by the county separately. So we could continue to increase our levy by 2% or by CPI. And if we did nothing with our debt service, the county would extend a lot less. So as a taxpayer, you would see a big reduction in your taxes, because that would be a separate line or process. It's still part of the taxpayer's tax bill. If we don't incur any more debt, they will see a decrease in their tax bill, but we would still, from an operating perspective, be looking at CPI increases in order to keep up with our costs.
That's a potentially risky proposition if you're thinking that when the tax levy decreases, we could recapture more somehow because consumers, our community will have more cash on hand. But there's another taxing district that did that not too long ago, and there was some incredibly loud feedback that was an inappropriate thing to do. So when their separate debt levy goes down, I don't know that we want to think about grabbing it right away. My personal opinion.
Yeah, it's somewhat kind of like, as a homeowner, having debt is actually not a bad thing for school districts. I know some districts have purchased their own debt. It gives you some more flexibility in terms of managing your tax bill, because you can abate your debt payments and still protect your operating levy, and have that cash for, at that point in 2027. I mean, we have new buildings, so I'm not anticipating any large expenditures, but
Well, John will be back. He'll miss it and he'll run again, so he'll be able to debate it. In
Or maybe I'll
2027.
just come to the meeting and make loud noises like I did last time.
And schedule separate meetings for that, John.
All right. Any other comments or questions or concerns about the levy presentation? Thank you, Jay. Appreciate all the hard work.
Thanks, Jay.
Any questions from the community? Any public comment?
No public comment.
All right. So unless somebody else would like to say something, I'm going to ask for this Truth and Taxation hearing to be adjourned at, what time is it? It is 7:08 p.m. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Leanne, roll call on that, please.
Andy Duran,
Yes.
Ann Hill,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig, John Morrison.
Yes.
All right. We are adjourned. So don't go anywhere. I think we just flip right over into a regular meeting. Am I correct? All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Lake Bluff Board of Education District 65 regular meeting for December 8th, 2020. Leanne, could you please call the roll?
Be happy to. John Morrison,
Yes. Here, present.
Leanne Charlo, present. Julie Gottschall,
Present.
and Richard Haig, not on right now. Andy Duran,
Present.
Ann Hill,
Present.
Mark Berry.
Present. All present, or enough for a quorum. So we are going to begin. And I'm going to move right to the opportunity once again for public comment. If anybody who is watching would like to make a comment to the board, please raise your Zoom hand and you'll be called on. If nobody raises their hand now, we can make public comment at the end of the meeting as well. So is there anything written, Shelley, that was presented to us?
Not so far, and no hands raised.
Okay, so we're going to move on to giving the board the opportunity, as we do in every meeting, to request a future agenda item, an item be put on our agenda to be discussed and prepared by the administration, as well as if they would like to present an item that they thought requires some discussion tonight without any kind of action on it. So if anybody would like to offer anything up, let me know. If you want to do it later, you can always email myself or Lisa. Not hearing any. We will go to the reports. I don't see anybody hanging out there for, I see Carrie, but I don't know if she's prepared to do a PTO report or if anybody's going to do anything. I haven't heard about that, so.
No PTO or Alliance report.
Okay. Principals, would you like to make a report or have anything to offer today?
We would.
Okay.
I can start. We'll go in order of buildings, I guess. So good evening, everyone. Happy December. I was commenting at the start of the meeting just how quickly it gets dark, and I just can't get used to it. But still trying to bring some energy this evening, and that's a little bit about what I want to talk about in regards to LBES and our report for this month. So we are just continuing to bring energy and try to reimagine and innovate as we enter this month of school and being fully remote. It's really continuing to require us to get creative. So a couple of things that I want to highlight. One is that our material pickup station got a little bit of a makeover. Just continuing to try to keep that process easy and organized. So for those on the board that may not have children in our elementary school, we just have open access to materials. So we have repurposed some of the sheds that are outside of the front of the building. So families can come by at any time to pick up supplies and materials as we strive to have some paper pencil experiences, hands-on. And so things were getting a little bit messy. So we've got labeled bins on the inside. It's organized and ready to go. So we just want that to continue to be easy and helpful for families. We also switched sides. So they were on the right, now they're on the left. Everything is ready to go there. Other thing I wanted to just talk about is how easy it is, I think, for us to list and rattle off all of the things that we miss about what school maybe used to look like. And so as I was thinking about this, some of the traditions that happen at LBES, from our frequent tables of food that bring us together in the main office or the teacher's lounge, to something that I'm really missing, and I think our teachers are too, just the powerful problem-solving moments that happen as we're passing in the hallway. So we still have time and space for team meetings, but I've been amazed over the years of the thinking and quick conversations that happen in the hall. And so we're just trying to keep our energy in a good place. And so some of the things that we're doing around LBES to keep staff morale high, because we know that if we spend time and energy on supporting the wellness of our teachers, it's going to trickle down to the students. It's going to have a positive effect on our in-person and our remote learning classrooms now. So we've done some what I would call random acts of kindness. So we've put quotes on the windshields of staff vehicles in our parking lot. We had a turkey wobble dance that our assistant principal put everything together in a really cute video. We are practicing wearing festive sweaters on Fridays all month long and encouraging our students to do so, and capturing photos to try to just spread some happiness and festivity. For the staff at LBES, we are doing Throwback Thursdays in the morning at 8 a.m. before school starts. We play a song from the 60s, 70s, or 80s, and the first staff member to text us with the accurate title of the song gets a token of appreciation, a little winnings. An annual event are the snowflake gifts for families in need. So that is happening again this year. We're working on some good news calls of the day. So we're calling family members of staff members with an affirmation, compliment, words of positivity. We have some positive awards for staff, our pause postcards. We have a staff edition as we continue a student edition as well. We've refreshed our lounge, our teacher's lounge, with the bulletin boards and some centerpieces. And then we're starting some team building experiences in our faculty meetings tomorrow. We're going to launch that as we just find ways to stay connected virtually. So lots of good things as we reinvent, reimagine, and find ways to come together. Last little bit I wanted to talk about this evening is just, I just continue to remain impressed. I've been joining in live Zoom sessions that our classroom teachers host throughout the day. One of my most favorite times to join in is that morning meeting, first thing in the morning. So I get to see a lot of good news. There was a classroom this morning, some of the families that practiced the elf on a shelf, kind of showing off where their elf was. Students just sharing good things that are going on and little tidbits of information. So it's amazing the things that transfer from the classroom, like when a student raises their hand and they say that they have a question, but really it's a comment or a story or something to add. So just joining in some celebrations, saw a word detective celebration this week in first grade. That was really exciting as they continue to grow and develop as readers. So just keeping that social emotional component at the forefront. We know how much it matters. Wanted to highlight some of those pieces tonight. So thanks to all of you for all you're doing at home, and another shout out to all of our teachers and their hard work to remain committed. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Kelly.
Kelly, can I ask you a quick question? You referenced the snowflake gift is going on. How do community members or families, I know normally we come pick a snowflake off the board in the office. How do we get those this year?
Such a great question. So my understanding, and I am amazed as I share this, my understanding is that all families have been accounted for at this point in time. And so I apologize for those that it is really a tradition that your family may look forward to or something that you appreciate participating in. All families have been accounted for. I think a couple of our lead staff members have called upon their own friends and family to sponsor, because we knew that that bulletin board in our office was a limitation. So hopefully we're not in the same predicament next year to try to reach out. But I would encourage you, I would say shout out to local business. Forest Greens has something that they're doing to support local families. And I'm sure Shields Township and other areas have ways to contribute to families in need.
That's awesome. Thank you.
All right, I guess it's my turn. I'm going to start with one of the most recent developments. Mr. Jackson and I have been, missing the opportunity to interact with students on a daily basis in the way that we would when students are in the building. And in addition to that, we realize the value of student feedback when it comes to looking at programming, especially in something like a remote learning environment, right? Like we talk to parents and we talk to staff, but we really wanted to hear from kids. And so Mr. Jackson and I both started today a principal advisory group. He met with 3 students. I met with 3 students. We're going to do that weekly, and we're going to revolve in different students as we go along, looking really at getting a diverse perspective. And I can tell you that the group that I met with today was very open and honest in providing some really valuable feedback. Some things that I learned and didn't know about their day-to-day online from home, other things that I could have guessed and assumed, but they were very positive and proactive. And we even talked a little sports. It turns out we had a whole bunch of football and baseball fans on there, but we had a young lady in 7th and 8th grade, and a boy from 6th grade and another boy from 7th grade. So we're doing these cross grade level. And it was really enjoyable for me. And I know Mr. Jackson had a great time as well. So there'll be more to share along those lines. I did also want to talk about an advisory activity that very much is in the vein of social emotional learning. And we did this about a week ago, where there were a series of questions that we were asking kids and kind of gauging how they're feeling. But one of the most valuable questions that we asked students was, what would you like your teachers to know about you? Just open-ended, no requirement to answer it, but if they wanted to, they could. And they did. And so I went ahead and selected some of those that I thought were valuable for you as board members to hear. There were definitely some themes that developed, so I went ahead and selected those. I left out those that were maybe more personal and specific, so as not to share information that could be easily identifiable, but at the same time, try and capture some of what I thought was really important to know. So bear with me as I read through some of the highlights if I can. Here we go. So again, the question was, what would you like your teachers to know about you? Sometimes I turn my camera off because I get insecure and stuff like that. I'm trying my hardest at school, even though I might get distracted sometimes. I would like you to know that I find most classes fun, and I'm glad that you can make it interesting. I just would like to have a little less digital homework because I hate having to go to digital school, then have to be on my Chromebook right after for homework. I don't always look like I'm focused, but I really am. Just because I'm not always looking straight at the camera doesn't mean I'm not listening. I would like you to know that you're the best and you always help us with our work and you help us on the most hardest topics. You also tell me the most funniest jokes. I hope I get to see you in person soon. Remote learning is very difficult for me. I'm here for you. I would like you to know that I have a hard time telling people that I need help or I don't understand whatever project or assignment I'm working on is. I like e-learning. I'm trying. I would like you to know that I don't like to speak in class. I need to be pushed more so that I work harder, because if you don't, I will do the minimum when I could do much more. That I appreciate things that teachers make and do and help me understand. And I appreciate when a teacher takes time to make a great lesson plan. And I notice and really appreciate when a teacher is always there to answer my questions. I enjoy power sliding on my longboard. I find you very caring and supportive and would want to know other teachers too. I don't like to have my camera on. I like dogs. I like playing video games too much. I think that you should give out 5 homework passes a week and give us 3 weeks for winter break and 2 weeks for spring break. And the last one, and perhaps one that really brought it all home to me, is I try my best every day to make you proud. So I can't top any of those. I think that they're all poignant and relevant and just really good feedback for us to keep in mind. And there's a much longer list than what I shared tonight, but I can tell you that our staff is looking at it and really taking it to heart. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of that with you.
Thanks, Nate. That was
really cool, Nate.
very
Thanks for
touching.
sharing that.
I hate to put this on anybody else to follow that, because that was a pretty cool thing. Jay, do you have anything for us in the reports today? No? Tracy, are you here?
Yep.
Do we have anything for the report today?
Just one quick short thing. I'm going to jump on the social emotional learning bandwagon that Kelly and Nate started. So Kelly and Nate both talked about how we've been really focused on the social emotional needs of our students and our staff members. Our social emotional learning committee has met, and we have heard from parents that many are struggling in their homes to support their students during remote learning, or when their students are in person but bringing work home in order to complete. And they're seeing that their students are struggling with things like work completion, or maybe even, as Kelly stated, feeling some grief around some of the lost activities that they're not able to do. So we are going to be putting together a series of parents' informational nights that will go throughout January and February. So we're in the process of working through those, but please be on the lookout, parents, for more information on those nights to come. And that's it.
Thanks.
You know, Mark, I did have one thing I just thought of. Our lunch program, or the meal service that we've been providing for students, was originally planned to just go through the end of the calendar year, December 31st. And it has been extended through the end of the school year. So we will be doing meals at school, in class, as well as continuing the remote pickups Monday mornings from 8 to 9 and Thursday afternoons from 4 to 5, all the way through June 30th. And we will also be doing them just the Mondays of winter break. So December 21st and December 28th, those Mondays from 8 to 9, we will also have meal pickup for anyone who's interested.
Great. That messaging, I assume, gets sent home to the families somehow, other than just from a board meeting?
Yes, I sent out a school messenger, and I believe that Shelley also put it up on the website.
Great. Thanks. President's report. I know you guys have loved hearing for the past 8 or 9 months announcements about the upcoming elections. That is almost here, so this is the last mention of it. If there's anybody who remains in the community interested in running for school board, you can still do it. The paperwork is available through the county clerk's office. It has to be signed and filled out and turned in by December 21. There's a video on our website as well as on the Vote Lake Bluff website interviewing, speaking to myself and a couple of the board members about what it's like to be a school board member. So I just thought I'd pass that along. We do have 4 folks who are planning on running, but if anybody else is interested, you are always welcome to do that. I also want to do follow up on what Kelly said and say a huge thank you to our teachers, not just in her building, but in Nate's building. I'm not a great wordsmith, but I just want to express with heartfelt gratitude how much they are doing for our students and how hard they're working. And to hear the words that Nate shared of all those kids, you know, those very heartfelt feelings, that things that they're feeling, know that they have a job that is incredibly important, that's impacting those kids every day. Similarly, I also want to have a big shout out to all our administrators. So what is it, 7 of you guys, something like that, for working 7 days a week around the clock under crazy conditions and inventing things that nobody's ever dreamed of even thinking of before. Your hard work is recognized, it is seen, it is felt by the community and the students and the teachers, that people who work for you, with you, and the kids and the families, and it is really appreciated. I will admit to doing a little bit of social media trolling in the community and paying attention to some of the social media outlets in our community, just for the purposes of keeping my finger on the pulse of what people are thinking about the schools. And what I didn't do, and I should have, was clipped out a few, but I can't tell you how many dozens of things that I have seen over the past 2, 3, 4 weeks about how great a job this is working out for the majority of kids. Just countless numbers of comments about how well a teacher has committed to their student or worked with their student, or a plan that is obviously put together by the administration has worked out in a way that has benefited so many. There's a lot of people struggling, and it doesn't work great for everybody, but I just think that you guys do an amazing job, and I want to say thank you. So appreciate all the work.
Can I piggyback on your comment, Mark?
Yeah.
Because I do some of that trolling too, and occasionally I think to send Lisa Leali a screenshot where somebody's making one of those comments. But I think it's really neat to see community really appreciates the very thoughtful work you've done in deciding when we can be in session and when we need to pause. And I really think that's a compliment to all of you that you've been able to accomplish that. But I also, like Mark, have seen so many nice comments about, from many people, about what a great job their teacher is doing. How terrific their child's experience is. And, along with that, people struggle with supporting their kids at home. It's not easy, but also like recognition that the teachers have been doing that every day. And so kind of maybe more new appreciation for what you guys are doing at the school. But I just want to add another voice to appreciation of what all of you are doing. Thank you.
Okay. Lisa, did you have anything for a report for tonight?
Yeah, just a few things. Also would like to thank this administrative team. I'll always remind folks that 5 of the 7 of us are new in our positions this year, which is really a tremendous accomplishment. When I listened to Tracy kind of talking about district-wide initiatives that she's jumping into and finding that time on top of learning her new position, listening to Jay for the last few months help us with the budget and understanding how different it is this year and organizing our thinking differently and making sure we're prepared. Couldn't be more proud of our building administrators for coming together as 2 new teams leading our buildings in this crazy, bizarre year. Just so incredibly proud right now. We did talk about giving. The Snowflake families are happening. We have donations coming in from our community. And so we are adding to those Snowflake boxes and bags the best we can. To Kelly's point, innovating, I'm hearing about new ideas for the musical. I'm hearing about new ideas for Career Day, our materials exchange, talent show for kids. Our staff in both buildings are trying to stay connected. So holiday get-togethers are happening, cookie exchanges are happening. I'm not even sure how some of this stuff is happening virtually, but it's happening, which is awesome because we all need to stay connected. And certainly connecting with other districts as well. I continue to do that. We're still moving along with articulating not only with neighbor districts, but I have one celebration that I was able to connect with our high school district in terms of curriculum. Had a really good and meaningful conversation to kind of give me an overview of the great work that has been going on between District 65 and District 115. Some areas where I think have some opportunity to partner where maybe we've had a little bit of difficulty in the past, but definitely got a great idea of the philosophy that's going on, how well our kids are doing when they matriculate from 65 to 115. And I think it's the start of a continuation of a great partnership. And it's been great. It was great for me to jump back into the curriculum world for just a little bit to start to get an idea of what we can do to make sure that we continue on the great path that's been set and continue to partner with our high school and Lake Forest 67 on behalf of our students. So thanks to everyone. And especially our teachers and students for hanging in there. It's a tough time. We all get it as parents and educators, but I'm really, really proud of Lake Bluff as a community and everything we've done for our kids.
Thanks, Lisa. I think that's great that we're making some progress at the high school. That's really good news. So that's it for the reports. We're going to move on to discussions, and I'm going to do something I haven't done in a long time. I'm going to give you guys an NSSED update. Shelley, if you could throw up the presentation. I think this is the first time as a board member that I've actually put together an actual presentation. I've talked to a number of things over the years, and I thought it was funny that Lisa and Shelley wouldn't let me have Zoom control of my own screen. So they took it from me because I'm not ready for that.
Trying to help, Mark.
So I just want to say, let me grab another thing to look at right here. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, stepping back even further. It's probably been 7, 8, 9 months. It was well before Lisa was here that I ever spoke about NSSED, and we should talk about it more regularly. For anybody watching who may not know, the NSSED is the North Suburban Special Education District. It is a cooperative of 18 schools that we are one of. Every one of those schools puts one of their board members onto the NSSED's governing board. So I sit on their governing board, and we meet monthly just like we do here. And it is a school for students with learning differences. Students from all those member districts are sent there, or have faculty from the NSSED comes to our buildings and works with students. Some schools rely on NSSED heavily and to the tune of millions of dollars a year, and others not so much. Our bill, which you'll see, is much lower. Tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of items that are hot and up and coming at NSSED. Some discussion about rebranding. We've done some work on a new financial model over there, and a new direction that the NSSED is spinning off on. Not getting rid of any of the old stuff, but developing some of those new services. I'm going to talk about where they are now, and then also Tracy and Jay are going to jump in at the end and share how we use NSSED and also how we spend money there. So I'm going to go over to the screen that Shelley's put up. Can you expand that rebranding slide, Shelley? Is that possible? Just to take the screen? It's the second one. Because I see two slides on my screen.
Might have to be a different view, Shelley. I think you're on presenter view.
It's not a big deal. I can work with the other one if you're not sure. It's fine.
I think if you hit swap displays, it'll do it.
Swap displays. All right, so if you could click on the rebranding slide, we'll just make that the primary. Yeah, so in 2018, NSSED started a strategic plan overhaul, or finished one. And one of the big outcomes of that had to do with what they call relationships and communication. And part of that was to refresh the master brand. And what that means, just to cut to the chase, what that means is NSSED is changing its name after being in business since the 1950s. It might be 1957 as the North Suburban Special Education it's so complicated, I can't remember. North Suburban Special Education, what is the D? I just lost it. That's crazy.
District.
Yeah. And it's become apparent over the past several years that many of the families of students and the students themselves are actually very uncomfortable with that name, specifically because of the word special education. Like, who wants to go to a school and be labeled as special education? And so to help with the image so the kids feel better about going to school, so the teachers and staff feel more motivated, teaching at a more cutting edge school that is looking to help kids be in the real world. They have refreshed the brand and led that off with changing the name, and they hired a rebranding professional who they landed on the name of True North. The full name is True North Educational Cooperative 804, and that's only because 804 is its actual district number. We all have a district number. For some reason, the cooperative's district number is 804, and their legal review team said you need to put the 804 in there to just differentiate it from some other institutions out there named True North. There's some other True North educational type companies out there in the world. Their brand is their most valuable non-tangible asset. And the cooperative is a little different than most public schools, right? They're actually selling to all of our schools. We don't have to use any of them, so they have to justify what they do every day. And that all starts with the name. And the effect of that new name trickles down into the innovation that they develop every day in their programming and what they do within their buildings. So that's a big deal to them. They're all very excited about it. I personally was not super excited about this specific name because there are a lot of other True Norths out there, but it had overwhelming support from the rest of the governing board. And I did support the idea behind changing the name regardless of where it landed. So they're moving forward with that effective July 1st. So that's a big deal. If you hear us talking about the True North, that's July 1st of 21. It's going to take a little while for that to switch over, but the True North Educational Cooperative will be the new NSSED. Shelley, if you can switch to the next screen. And if I'm using acronyms or things that don't make sense, you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to stop me and ask questions. With the new financial model, I would ask Jay to chime in with anything here because Jay was intimately involved. Jay and I both sit on the NSSED's financial committee, and we meet not quite monthly, but we did actually over the past year probably meet at least monthly to discuss and develop a new financial model that will be effective July 1st of 2021. So this coming July, NSSED will be operating under the new financial model. And in fact, right now, they are planning for that. So all the meetings that Lisa and Tracy are going through with the NSSED administrators to plan for placements and usage next year is part of that new model. This came also from the 2018 strategic plan. The goal objective has to do with fiscal responsibility and resource allocation. NSSED is committed to wisely, transparently, and efficiently managing cooperative resources. So we've developed and implemented a completely new approach to billing and financial accountability. Why did we bother doing this? If you've been in the North Shore on a board for longer, for a while now, you may have had exposure to some of the craziness that was former NSSED billing. There was a time when I first came on the board when our previous special education, not Kevin, Ann Wirtz, 2 special education directors ago, and our super at the time, John Asplin, couldn't even explain the bill to me about what we were paying for and where it was going. It was so convoluted and confusing. A lot of that had to do with the fact that the cooperative processed and processed all of and held a portion of our IDEA funds, the Individuals with Disability Education Act funds that comes from the federal government every year. And part of the terms of agreement in the cooperative was that they held part of that money back for their own use. And so there was a bit of a black box as to how funds were being used. And so that there was a lot of pushback from all the districts. And now Lisa and Jay and Tracy will be seeing a bill which is going to probably be a little scary at first, because every little penny will be nickel and dimed and laid out for you. There will be nothing hidden. There will be nothing that is not accounted for in those bills. And the fact that they no longer hold IDEA funds and we get those, we will now be billed for some of the money that they were keeping from us in the past. And so it may look like some of our bills have gone up when part of that is due to IDEA money is coming direct to our district and then going to NSSED. Jay, I don't know if I kind of whizzed through that. Does that make sense what I said? Is that clear?
Yeah, no, I think you summed it up very well. I think that the key thing is that before, nobody really knew what anything costs.
Right.
So you couldn't make any decisions. I think, a lot of this came about because of a change in leadership at NSSED. I think some of it was a change in the law. We actually, federal government stepped in and said, you're not allowed to hold on to people's federal dollars anymore. You need to give them to the districts and let them choose how to spend them. So that was part of it. And then really also a change in the best practice of how to educate people with learning differences. More and more districts are bringing those kids back into their own districts because it's been proven that, you get a better, the goal is to give people a free and appropriate education. And it's best to do that with peers in their own district rather than to take someone who has a different need and ship them off to be with other kids that have the same need. So their enrollment is going down and they needed to kind of reinvent themselves and come up with some new services and look for different ways to get revenue. So that's, I think, was a big part of it as well.
Yep.
The other thing that a lot of people harped on was kind of fairness. There was a big membership fee that we had to pay every year to belong, and it really wasn't clear where that money was going and what it was paying for. They were also selling services to non-members for a small premium, but not significant enough premium that it didn't seem fair that somebody didn't have to pay the membership fee and could walk in and pay just a little bit more and get the same services. So I think there was some unhappiness about that. And then because it was a black box, some districts were probably subsidizing other districts because things were not delineated in terms of what they cost. So, one district might be paying a certain amount and paying too much and another district paying too little, but nobody really knew. And it was just this feeling of, well, we don't even understand it. So
Yep.
I think this will be a great model and if nothing else, it'll be transparent and we can make good decisions.
Yep. It's a living, breathing document and model. So that it can be changed as we need it. We've already got plans to review it at least once a year based on feedback after we get into it. A little bit of, Jay reminded me a little bit of history too, is and I'll get into it more as I proceed. With the guidance from the strategic plan, NSSED has to remake itself a little bit. And one of the indicators of them doing a really good job is, in one essence, you can sort of say they're putting themselves out of their traditional businesses by having more kids educated in their home districts. Is an awkward measure of success because it means less revenue coming into the cooperative. And so while that's good, they're needing to reinvent themselves. And so we'll move on to some of that moving forward. And again, please don't hesitate to ask any questions on any of this stuff. Shelley, if you could go one slide forward. So one of the ways that they're reinventing themselves is in a more consultative nature, providing and developing programs for coaching and training and seminars. All at the request of the member districts. They're having these annual meetings with all the local district superintendents and special ed directors to ask what your needs are so they can develop programming to help assist the local districts. NSSED has a huge talent pool of people really well versed in the cutting edge special education curriculum. And what better way to spread that information than develop, seminars and training and coaching. And there are a few areas that they're focusing on. This is not comprehensive, but a couple of ideas that are already in the works, and there's some things already out there. Is one of the things that's become apparent is typical kids, neurologically typical kids, benefit from some of the best practices we use with kids with learning differences. And so not all educators have been trained in some of the methodology that works really well with kids with learning differences and kids who have what are called neurologically typical. So there is some revenue opportunity there. They've developed some programming and training for helping deal with kids with severe autism. They've got programming in the works and already done some for technology, for the use of aids, technological aids and assistance for kids with various limitations. The mental health world, as distinguished from learning disabilities, has become a big issue in public schools. And their team of mental health professionals, social workers and such at NSSAD can develop programming to help the local districts deal with that. Similarly, social and emotional learning is a topic that they'll be developing. And another one, which you've heard us mention, is they're going to take the lead for much of at least the northern part of the North Shore on leading some conversations on equity. That developed all the way back with the 2018 strategic plan revision, when their objective was to develop something regarding equity and access. They want to understand and identify pathways and barriers to student success, to eliminate systemic barriers to growth through adaptive and flexible solutions. And I know that Dr. Leali is already taking part in conversations with superintendent and special education peers at other districts to get this conversation going and decide where we want to head with that. Again, jump in if you want to editorialize at all, Lisa or anybody else, to add more color here.
Well, I appreciate the overview because I've definitely seen evidence of them supporting us in all these different ways. And certainly the equity conversation is important. Kurt Schneider is great in terms of his leadership, his background in this work. And he likes to talk about there being lots of different doors to enter the equity conversation. And so I really appreciate that perspective and the perspective of the member districts that have been working on it together. But certainly, Tracy can talk a little bit more about each of these services that we utilize the most, but it's a really great partnership for our kids and families. And I appreciate all the work they're doing.
Yep. In case anybody didn't know, Kurt Snyder is the superintendent at NSSED. Shelley, if you could advance the slide. So those three previous slides were a highlight of some of the hot stuff going on. They're all good news, things that the direction they're heading and the name change and all new and good. So a little bit of a snapshot of today. We mentioned it briefly earlier. And Shelley, if you could advance one chart temporarily just to show the enrollment trends. As in our own district, we've seen some decline over the years in enrollment. NSSED has seen the same. That fiscal year 21 bar is actually a projection. When they were thinking before COVID, they were expecting 318 kids, which was roughly similar to the previous year. But the actual to date is only about 277, 278 kids. So it's quite a bit down. And every one of those kids represents a tuition payment. So it's a lot of money. Okay, if you can go back, Shelley, please. That leads directly to, unfortunately, what's looking like to be a pretty substantial, at least at this point, budget deficit. Their CSBO, a woman named Julie Dillon, I think went to the same school of conservatism as Jay did, and has budgets very conservatively. And so we're really hoping that it doesn't turn out to be a deficit to the extent of 1.45 million. But if the trend continues and districts are not enrolling their kids in NSSED programs because everything is remote and they're just thinking this is not the right time to put kids in those programs, $500,000 of which of that deficit is expected to come from their COVID expected expenditures as well. And the rest is, the majority of which is from tuition shortages because of enrollment decreases. And so they're working to find ways to balance that budget and work around that. But as of right now, the outlook is not great. there are a variety of ways that that can be addressed. At the end of the year, there would be a reconciliation, and all the districts might be on the hook for some portion of that. That it typically would be apportioned according to member district enrollment, I believe. But I don't hold me to that. I'm not specifically sure how that would happen or if it will be anywhere near that amount at the end of the year. A related issue has to do with the co-op's fund balance. We've often had conversations in-house about fund balance and what it means to us. It's fund balance in the districts. One of the things I've learned working with 18 member districts is every single district has a different spin on fund balance. They all interpret it and think about it differently. And cooperatives have a different, fund balance for cooperatives is different. You know, think about it. They do not have direct contact with taxpayers. They are one step removed from the taxpayers. We, the member districts, are their clients. And there is very fuzzy language in their policy on what fund balance really is. And it has not become too much of an issue over the years because they have had typically not much of a cash flow problem because they historically held our IDE, a big chunk of our IDEA funds, and they processed them. So there was wiggle room within that cash to help them with their cash flow needs when they were shorter on cash flow between payments. They don't get payments at the same regular schedules, the twice-a-year payments that we get from the county. It's more spread out over the course of the year, and that's something they're going to have to deal with very specifically in terms of scheduling billing to accommodate their more volatile, their more risky cash flow situation that they're dealing now that fund balance isn't completely identified. So that is a conversation that's going to be had more at the co-op over the next year, specifically laying out policy as what fund balance means to them and how to maintain it. Some interesting news having to do with facilities consolidation at the co-op. They currently have a campus at Red Oak Lane in Highland Park, which is just down the street from Deerfield actually, but it's in Highland Park, which is their new building. And it's actually got 3 buildings on it. Their high school, as well as I think it's their preschool program. And they have 2 big leases, one for their NSAE North Shore Academy Elementary, and one for their life skills program that costs to the tune of something like $400,000 a year in annual leases. And they do have space in their buildings on campus. So they've hired a consultant to help them do an analysis of how to effectively use space and perhaps get rid of those leases and bring all the kids back to their main campus that do not stay in their home schools and eliminate those $400,000 in annual leases. So these are a number of the things that they're looking at now. Jay, I don't know if you have anything to add on any of that. It's kind of a snapshot in time of big issues. Shelley, if you could advance that slide, I'd appreciate it. One more. Okay, so just going to wrap it up by allowing Tracy a couple minutes to talk about how District 65 now uses NSSCD. And then follow that with Jay on spending.
Thank you, Mark. So our teachers and administrators really view our work with NSSED as a partnership. And as a small district, we access many of the supports and services that NSSED or True North provides. We utilize professional development in many forms, including one-day offerings or multi-year cohorts, such as the work with Safe and Civil Schools that has been mentioned in some of our meetings in the past. We also utilize that teacher coaching to support a number of areas, including helping our teachers with some additional support with students who show different behaviors within the classroom, and also students who require maybe a differentiated curriculum for educational life skills. We also contract some support, such as a physical therapist, school psychologist, speech language pathologists, vision therapists, and some assistive technology staff when we need some assessments done for assistive tech. And then finally, we access some of the educational programming for students who require those specialized learning environments, Mark, that you were talking about earlier. So those are the variety of ways that we access each of those supports.
You know, Tracy, made me think of something I didn't include in my financial model presentation, was that part of the membership fee now will include a base level of professional development for all districts as part of your membership. That is not something that non-members can still buy into the cooperative, but they will not be entitled to the professional development. So it's something we need to take advantage of because it's included in there anyways. So
And yes, in years past, I would say we have accessed their professional development opportunities very frequently. This year's been a little bit different because of just the learning scenario we're in this year. A few of our teachers have been able to access a few different 1-day or 2-day trainings, but that is definitely something as we go back to a more typical school year that we will definitely be able to take advantage of again.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jay?
I'm gonna just throw up a slide here. Oop, that's the wrong one. Oh. So this is spending over time going back to 2004, 2005. This is payments to NSSCD. And you can see that we spent, $700,000-800,000 a year back in the early 2000s. This was, between 5 and 7% of our operating budget. And in 2009-10, this included a payment for the construction of those buildings that Mark was talking about. So we, as a member, own part of these buildings, and part of the new financial model is how, because we all own these buildings and have paid for them, we all share in their upkeep. And should the cooperative be dissolved or the buildings be dissolved, then the money would go pro rata to each district. Yep. We've made over time so that, as you can see, over time, we've significantly decreased our usage of NSSCD. And this, I think, was started, by Ann Wirtz and continued by Kevin. And now by Tracy, have made a significant effort to bring our kids back to our district and educate them with their peers. So, I can't speak to the financial model back in the past, but in prior years, they send a lot more kids. So the number of kids we send to NSSCD is a function of really how well we can meet these kids' needs in our own district. And so some of it is a little bit of luck. It just depends on who moves into your district and what differences they have and whether or not you're equipped to address them. But some of it also is, intentional. So we've made a big effort to bring kids back and educate them within our district. And so you can see that here. And over the last, say, 10 years, we've had, very good success in doing that. We are still employing those principles. And again, just because of who has moved into the district, there are a higher number of kids, both in this year and last year, that we were not able to. We tried to educate them in our district and felt that it was in their best interest to get them additional services at NSSCD. So the increase in the last 2 years reflects really a greater number of kids being outsourced. In addition, I believe you're aware that we have purchased additional psychological or psychologist services. So we were not able to meet our caseload with our existing staff. And one of the services that NSSCD provides is psychologist services. So we have this year a full-time 1.0 FTE psych that is on loan, or that we're paying for. They're an NSSCD employee, and we're paying for them through NSSCD, which helps us because as our needs change, it's more flexible. NSSED can reallocate that person to another district. Whereas if it's our staff member, it's more of a long-term proposition. So it's really the additional psychologist and then additional kids that we're outsourcing. And then just quickly, these orange bars here, as Mark had pointed out, it looks like we're spending more because we're getting all of our federal funds and being billed back for it deliberately. Whereas before, the true cost of the services were not reflected in what we were paying because the cooperative was holding on to some of our money and we never got it. So
Yeah.
This is really more of a true cost of what the services are. And you can see now we're still about 3.5% of our operating budget.
Which is quite a bit lower than it was in the early 2000s for sure.
So even though the dollar amount looks more, our budget has increased significantly. So as a percentage, it's much less.
So I would ask I hope this all sort of makes sense. We haven't had an NSSED conversation in a while. They're an important part of our district. We will bring that back to at least semi-annually. It kind of slipped between the cracks and I apologize for that, but we will it's definitely on our board planning calendar to do this at least semi-annually. If there's any questions or anything, don't hesitate to ask, or if you want to contact offline, happy to address that as well. So move ahead. All right. And now Dr. Leali is going to do a return to learn update.
Thank you. And thank you for that update on True North Educational Cooperative 804, as they are reminding us. So we are, as everyone knows, almost fully remote at home for our students. We continue to bring in between 20 and 30 students between the two buildings each day, students that need some additional support, very, very much socially distanced with some volunteer teacher assistants. And we don't often talk about our teacher assistants and how critical they are to our programming. But if I could just take a moment and recognize that, it's really an essential role in our schools, and we could not do what we do without them. And I will also take this opportunity to remind folks that our tech manager is new in this year of remote learning and has also, with his partner, had a baby in the last 3 weeks. So we have been pulling together in lots of ways. It's been taking a village to keep us going. And I would thank our former retirees for even coming back and helping us. Lori Brown has been around and Margaret's been around. And it's a testament to Lake Bluff, how people pull together to support when we need it. So we thank everyone for that. So our positivity rate, our incidence rate in our zip code and county continue to be high. The data on our Lake County school dashboard continues to lag behind a bit. But our positivity rate shot up just recently to over 20%. And as you may or may not recall, 8% was the threshold that Lake County was looking for. We were hovering around 4 to 6%. And in the last couple of days, it's up to 20%. That probably reflects the fact that there's been more limited testing going on, and more people who are well are staying home and not getting tested for no reason or out of anxiety. So the more people who are actually feeling ill going to get the tests, and the less tests involved, result typically in a higher positivity rate. Our incidence rate, which is the number of positive tests out of the total population, also continues to be a bit high, but it's taken a dip in the last few days. So we've been watching that as well. But I can tell you that regardless of the numbers, the local impact of the higher numbers has been pretty significant. We have had over 40 staff members and over 200 students impacted by the guidelines that we have to follow with regard to COVID in one way, shape, or form. That doesn't mean all positive cases, but have had to be at home, have had to be sent home, have had to quarantine, have been close contacts. So we really have definitely felt that impact. At this point, we've had 4 staff members that are actual staff members of Lake Bluff, not including our outsourced other staff that have been diagnosed as positive. And we have over 10 students, a little over 10 that we know of, that have had positive test results. But again, lots of close contacts as those numbers go up. And so we have definitely had staff who either they're not positive and having some kind of symptom, or close contact in their home that have had to quarantine or isolate. So that brings me a little bit to a reminder that, you know, managing a school within COVID times is a little bit difficult because the health department has issued a range of guidelines that we are absolutely committed to adhering to. And there's been a little bit of talk recently about, you know, they're just guidelines and they're not the law, which is true. We do not, it is not law that when school resumes, that students come back, that we have to follow the guidance of the Lake County Health Department. But I would take this opportunity to remind folks that we consult a lot with our attorneys and our legal counsel, and we would never want to put the district at risk by not adhering to the guidance that the health department issues if we decide to have students back in school, if and when we decide to have them. And again, we've had them this whole time. Even with smaller numbers, we've continued to adhere strictly to that guidance. And we also know that the science continues to change. And so therefore the guidance continues to evolve. In the last week or so, there has been a change in the guidance issued from the CDC, which is trickling down to Illinois Department of Health and the Lake County Health Department regarding the length of time for a quarantine. So until now, it's been a 14-day quarantine. And at this point, that amount of time is being reduced to around 7 days, 7 to 10 days, because I think there's more and more evidence that the 5 to 7 day mark is around when you would have the average amount of time that symptoms would appear. So we are considering that as we look forward to our return to learn, our returning to in-person instruction with our students that have been with us and those that want to join us for trimester 2. As you know, we have at this point tentatively said that the week of January 18th would be our first time back in the building at the earliest, but given this new guidance, we will be talking at our Return to Learn Task Force on Thursday about this new guidance and a potential adjustment, maybe a little bit earlier if we can, to start bringing students back in person if we feel like we can. So again, we'd be monitoring the metrics. We know that locally, even though the threshold for Lake County is 14 per 100,000 cases, we were still okay around 20 to 30 per 100,000 cases. We were able to manage and feeling like we had our feet under us. So we would continue to look for those metrics to return to those numbers so that we felt confident that we could handle it. But again, given this guidance, we're really trying to be responsive and involve our community in those discussions. So again, we'll have another meeting on Thursday at 9 o'clock. The community is welcome to join us for the conversation. They're quick meetings, but sometimes they last a little bit longer than a half an hour. But we definitely recognize that this is a difficult time for our students and parents. We did assure the community that we would do our best to bring students back as soon as we could, those who are comfortable, and we will continue to work on that. I'm being updated weekly or bi-weekly from the health department on the vaccinations. It's extremely good news that we're seeing the vaccinations start to be deployed. Lake County has spent a tremendous amount of money and time investing in an infrastructure to ensure that those who want to receive the vaccination can on the schedule that's been outlined. So I would encourage folks to go to the Lake County Health Department, sign up for the updates. There's also a system that you can enroll in to get your demographic information put into the system so that you can find out when the vaccination will be available to you. And then obviously keep track of both doses, because at this point, the vaccinations that we are looking to receive are the 2-dose vaccinations. And we want to make sure that everyone who wants those can have those. At this point, teachers are looking like they're in the second phase. That's still at this point looking like spring, which is really great news. And so it's a light at the end of the tunnel. I think we know we need to push through. This is going to be a tough few weeks. But again, our committee will continue to look at when we can possibly start to bring kids back. I feel really confident in our mitigation strategies, which is a big emphasis from the CDC. It is not only about metrics, but also about what we are doing proactively to mitigate risk and lower risk for our staff and students. Bottom line is we need to keep everyone safe. Otherwise, learning doesn't happen. And so we will do our best to monitor those numbers, make sure our mitigation strategies are in place, and bring kids back as soon as we can. Any questions on that?
Thanks, Lisa. Have you been hearing any feedback from the community, Lisa?
I do hear a little bit of feedback. I mean, generally speaking, the community's been tremendously supportive. I know that parents are doing their absolute best to help us and partner with us this year on behalf of their students. Our teachers are doing a tremendous job. Our administrators are on site every day with our TAs and the students that still come to us. We continue to work on scheduling adjustments. We'll be talking in the next couple of months about some of the data that we're seeing and some of the professional development that we're doing around math in particular, to make some adjustments and try to shore up some of the difficulties that we're seeing that our kids are having coming out of the spring and into the fall. There's definitely some frustration still out there, some differing opinions on whether or not we should be out or whether we should be kind of pushing through. As you know, this is a local decision. The health department makes recommendations. Those are not, in terms of virtual or remote learning versus hybrid learning, those are recommendations, and it is up to the local administrative team and superintendent to decide what is right for their community based on what their numbers look like, what their staffing looks like, what they feel they can provide in terms of risk mitigation. And so again, as with anything, there's differing opinions, but I feel really confident at this point that based on how our staff are doing, and the impacts that we're seeing there, that we've made the right choice. I have received some emails from staff members as recently as last week indicating that they're very happy that we have a remote option at this point because they have felt sick, maybe not COVID, but they've had other illnesses that would have prevented them from being in the building. Even with a runny nose or a sore throat, we cannot have our teachers in the building. In previous years, that would stop a teacher from teaching. And the reason teachers are grateful for that is because it's really difficult to make substitute plans that are effective for kids, especially in a remote environment. So our teachers are dedicated. They know that if they're not the ones in front of the camera and in front of the kids, engaging the kids, it's going to be a difficult day for them. And they would rather be there, even if they're feeling a little bit under the weather, then have to try to make sub plans and support someone who isn't as familiar with the platform, isn't as familiar with the curriculum. And certainly then that becomes a difficulty for the rest of the team. So, logistically, although it is difficult, I know it is for our families and parents. I know also that the continuity that this provides and for our teachers and students during this time is also really important. So again, just like anything, it's a balance. There's pros and cons to everything, but I would say that overwhelmingly, again, the community's been very supportive, very collaborative and working with us. They send their questions, they send their concerns, they're honest with us, and we appreciate the feedback. We continue to try to improve.
I just want to say, just in the time that we've had this meeting, I got a text with a request to sign a petition that apparently is circulating with regard to districts 115 and 67 about getting the kids back in school before Monday, January 11th. I don't know if we've seen anything like that in this community, but I'm sure others like me are getting it. It does ask the question in here, how are our neighboring and bigger districts like Libertyville and Winnetka currently making a hybrid model happen?
So, I know the specifics around some of their plans, and I've been keeping in touch with some other North Shore districts, Winnetka, Libertyville as well. And again, these are local decisions, and they both have different models than we have. They're both implementing different models. One has an AM/PM schedule, and the other one, I actually am not sure about the other one's schedule, but I haven't heard of a petition here like that. I have no doubt that there is that sentiment out there about trying to get kids in sooner than that. And again, we'll be talking about it on Thursday. I think the CDC's adjustment and recommendations may help us with that. I would just emphasize that each district has its own set of unique circumstances, especially in terms of staffing and class size. When you look at the 6-foot distancing guidance, which I don't see going away for quite some time, 6 feet between individuals is a math problem that we cannot avoid right now. And when you cannot fit everyone into a space where you need supervision for students and certain amount of furniture, there's definitely obstacles to that. So again, We are preparing that the next time we have kids in the building, we will be bringing in as many as have indicated that they want to come. It has required adjustments to staffing. It is going to require adjustments to scheduling for students and parents. We're working through all of that. So the answer is, I'm sure there's a sentiment out there about that, but I feel like we've made really solid decisions in terms of the health of our community right now, and I feel pretty confident in those decisions.
Anybody else have questions for Dr. Leali? Not hearing any, so we will move on to more Dr. Leali, who we're going to have a conversation. We want the listening audience, all 5 of you, and whoever watches this on tape in the future, to know that the school board has 1 employee. Our 1 employee is Dr. Leali, is just superintendent. We have no other employees in the district. And we evaluate the superintendent every year on a regular calendar. Typically, it's completed by the springtime. And with the income, since Dr. Leali is new, we would like to involve her in the process of developing, being part of the development of a tool to evaluate her annually. And so we did have a little bit of a conversation about this in closed session earlier, in which case you can talk about specific employee issues, whether it's historic or current, that will help shape the new evaluation tool. So now in public, we're going to talk about more of the how it's going to work, what we're looking at. There's I believe it's a piece of software that we're considering to help us in the evaluation, and Dr. Leali will take it from there.
Sure. First, want to thank the board for giving me an opportunity to be a part of the discussion. It is really an important piece for me, especially as a new superintendent, and as an educator who's worked on curriculum and assessments for a long time. Assessment for me is about feedback, and that's what I'm really looking forward to receiving from the board. So we have had 2 meetings with a subcommittee of board members who have reviewed previous superintendent evaluation tools, and then also previewed a new tool. Some of the issues that were brought up around the previous tool are just logistical and efficiency in nature. I think the previous tool was a little bit cumbersome in order to collect data from 7 members and tabulate it and kind of get it into a workable form where there was a final evaluation that really the board felt like was a good indicator of overall performance. And so the tool that we tried to look at tends to address some of those issues, but as with anything, there are some pros and cons. So we met twice, we previewed this tool. One came out a little bit over the other one, and I'm going to walk us through it in a second. But again, I just want to emphasize the purpose of the superintendent evaluation for me is about feedback, and that final evaluation is sort of like a summative at the end of the year, where there isn't much for me to do once that's complete. So for me, the idea is that that tool hopefully is something that helps you create an efficient way to collect data, see my my self-evaluation and feedback that I have on my own performance, but more importantly, that throughout the process, we have open lines of communication, and you feel comfortable enough to give me feedback throughout the year so that I can make mid-course corrections or adjustments if needed. So before I start walking through the tool, are there any questions on that? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And what we're looking at is a digital tool called Super Eval. It's been in use on the East Coast for a long time. It's really built on a set of standards that's been in use in New York and Pennsylvania. It's pretty new to Illinois, but it is being endorsed by the Illinois Association of School Administrators, which is the Superintendent Association, as well as IASB. So essentially what it does is, again, it's just the tool to kind of facilitate the process. Each year, the board and superintendent would come together collaboratively on annual goals, which need to be SMART goals. And as many of those can be entered into the system as needed. And then the system also provides a list of competencies under big areas of leadership that are kind of national areas of leadership that the board and superintendent, we would together kind of decide which of these competencies we think should be included in the evaluation for that current year. So this is not an exhaustive list. I'm looking at a demo account, but the big ideas, as you can see, board relations, community relations, staff relationships, business and finance, instructional leadership, which incorporates curriculum, student achievement, and growth. So then under each of these big areas are individual criteria. Some of them have been deselected in this list. This list includes about 20. Your previous evaluation had 59 criteria, as well as strengths and weaknesses, and then your contractual goals, which I also have as well, which would be incorporated into here. So once those competencies are agreed upon, I would be able to use this system to create a self-evaluation that everyone would be able to see. Each criteria would have a place for me to rate myself. As you can see, this is not my demo account, but this person has rated themselves highly effective. This is not mine, but it could be. And then I would be able to include my own reflections and comments and supporting evidence, which this is the part I kind of like, because as I move through the year, I would be able to insert documents or communication, anything that I think supports the criteria that you're looking for. And then once this self-evaluation is complete in each of the domains, then I would be able to submit it to the board, and you would have, each of you would get a reminder, sort of an email saying, okay, you know, the superintendent has completed the self-evaluation. You would then be able to go in individually into this system, look at everything that I had submitted, and under each of those domains, include your own comments and your own thoughts, and then a rating on each of the domains yourself. Once each of those individual board member assessments is done, Mark would get a reminder that everyone has done it. This system would sort of tabulate all of the quantitative data and try to pull together what could be a final evaluation for the superintendent as a draft. And then that proposed board evaluation could go to the entire board for discussion. And then you would have the option to change anything, include other comments, change your rating one way or the other based on what the system tabulated. And of course, we could together set our own dates. So the goals are customizable. Those would be coming directly from work that we would be doing in the district. The competencies are not customizable in the sense that we can't add any, but we can take some away. When I went through and looked at the previous tool with the 59 criteria, a lot of those criteria fell under the big areas that this system addresses. So I think it would be easy enough for us to kind of put together a cheat sheet even of some of those other areas, criteria areas that you've looked at in the past, and kind of align them to the big ideas, so that as you're looking through each of those big areas, you would have some ideas of what you have in the past looked at in terms of your superintendent, what you might want to comment on, or what you might want to see additional evidence of. So I think overall, it would be helpful. This system would be helpful in terms of dealing with some of the efficiency and logistical issues that I heard a lot about. I think there would be a way to sort of marry the criteria from the previous assessment into this more streamlined approach. But I definitely think moving forward, knowing that we have a lot of board seats up, we have 4 new board members coming on, it would be nice for this board to kind of set the stage with a nice streamlined and clean process for superintendent evaluations to set the next board up. And then the next board would also continue with the superintendent evaluation subcommittee, and we could continue to evaluate how this process is working. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have a calendar in mind for adoption of this process?
I would love to adopt it sooner than later, because it would be great for this evaluation to be complete by March or early April. And I would certainly want time to be able to complete my self-evaluation and put evidence in there, make sure that we have the goals and competencies agreed upon.
Okay. So if the committee that evaluated it is recommending it, then we should probably move ahead in our next meeting or so to approve the purchase of the software, right?
Yeah, so the cost is $2,000 a year, and it's a subscription.
Which we don't need to approve, actually.
No, no, but I just want to be transparent about that. There is a cost with this system where there hasn't been in the past. I think you've utilized SurveyMonkey, and Mark's done a lot of the
If I had billed you, it would have been more than $2,000.
annual labor associated with it. But there are opportunities, if we like this system and the workflow attached to it, there are opportunities to expand for less money to other administrators in the district and kind of have a similar approach for our district level administrators.
Okay. My suggestion would be to move forward and bring it, if we need to do anything more with the board, bring it to the board. If not, move ahead with it. Any other thoughts?
I would
I would
say,
agree. I would say I sat on the committee and worked with Ian and Leanne and Lisa.
Andy, you're cutting out a little bit.
It also would keep us accountable. Oh, I'm sorry. Say it also would keep us accountable in the sense of being able to stay on track, look at dates, not have it all on one person.
I also agree that we should move forward with it.
it looks like a good tool. I didn't realize there was a cost associated with it that we didn't have before, which doesn't delight me, but if it does keep us on track and saves some of the president's time, then I would go with the committee's recommendation.
All right, so this is not a voting item, not an action item. We're giving guidance. And so we'll move forward with that. We also discussed in closed session that I will move ahead with an informal interim evaluation in the form of conversations with each board member privately to give Lisa some interim conversation feedback, because if we waited till the formal evaluation to do all that, it'd be too late to make any course corrections or changes. So we'll be doing that as well. So if there's any other question, if there's not any other questions or comments, I'll move on.
Thank
Anybody?
you.
All right, so now we're going to go on to our action items. Our first action item is the certification of the tax levy. As you saw in the tax levy hearing, Jay brought us the levy for approval and discussion. Are there any other questions or comments or additional, anything that anybody would like to say or have Jay clarify before we move forward? All right. May I have a motion to approve the certification of the tax levy as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haag,
Yes.
Andy Duran,
Yes.
Ann Hill,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
John Marsden.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Item B is the Canon copier contract. Mr. Khan will provide an overview of the copier contract. The copiers were intended to be replaced at the end of the fiscal year. However, due to a change made by Google, we would have lost the ability to print from Chromebooks on December 31st without a copier software upgrade. Our Canon rep has worked out a deal to buy out our current copier lease 8 months earlier, replace all the copiers with the newest models, and upgrade all software on a cost-neutral basis. Mr. Khan.
So as I presented in the budget during the hearing, we have $150,000 in there for new copiers this year. So we budgeted for new copiers. We were expecting to do them in March. When the original copier lease was put in place, there was only a 2-year maintenance agreement on the software. So we are basically running on old software right now. And because of so we're not able to keep up with some of the changes when the Chromebooks change their software. So long story short, we need to act a couple months sooner than we were anticipating, but the vendor is willing to buy out our contract a little bit earlier. They typically do a 5-year lease, and then after about 4.5 years, come in and buy out the end of the lease and replace all your equipment because it's cheaper for them to maintain existing customers than to try to get new customers. So it's a pretty good deal. Our payment is going to be the same with the exception of the additional 3 years of software. We're going to get 5 years of software maintenance with the 5-year lease. So for roughly the same payment, we will be upgrading all of our copiers in the district, upgrading all of our software, and basically maintaining our print environment at the same cost for the next 5 years.
Any comments or discussion on this item?
I can't believe the copier costs the same as about financing a car, but I have no idea about any of this, and I'm sure Jay knows more about it than any of us. So I'm saying let's go ahead and get this done.
It's 12 copiers, so it's actually pretty good. It's a significant savings over the printing environment we had prior to getting these copiers in. So we've had good service from the company. It's really increased efficiency and saved costs the last 5 years. So I'd like to stay with it.
And that contract has been reviewed by our legal team?
Yes, actually, the Hodges negotiated, I don't know if you recall, they went back and forth and had actually delayed the whole transaction 5 years ago, going back and forth and nailing down some terms that they wanted in the contract. So we are rolling over those same exact terms and agreements in this new one.
All right. May I have a motion to approve the Canon copier contract as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call vote, please.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Duran,
Yeah.
Hill,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Marsden,
Yes.
Charlo, yes, Gotchall.
yes,
The motion's approved. Item C has to do with the release and settlement agreement with Country Mutual Insurance Company. As discussed in closed session, the board is asked to approve the release and settlement agreement with the Country Mutual Insurance Company. Any questions or comments on this before we vote? So did I hear somebody? No?
no, go ahead, Mark.
May I have a motion to approve the release and settlement agreement with Country Mutual Insurance Company as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Duran,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Marsden,
Yes.
Charlo, yes, Gotchall,
Yes,
Haig.
Yes.
The motion's approved. Item D, board policy. So board policy 2:24 or 2:240 allows policies to be adopted on first reading if necessary or prudent in order to be legally compliant. Our attorney has suggested the policies included in this board packet be adopted as soon as possible. Those are all there for your review. There's quite a few of them. Does anybody in our policy committee have any comment or wish to add anything about this? Or anybody in the administration?
Just as a reminder, we are going to be starting the policy customization project in January. And so the idea is just to make sure that we have our policies updated and approved so that we can start on that project as soon as possible, as soon as they're able to help us with it.
Any further discussion? May I have, go ahead.
no, I keep saying no, right, as you're moving on anyway.
Sorry. All right, so may I have a motion to approve revisions to the following? I don't have a list. May I have a motion to approve the revisions to the board policies included in the packet as recommended by the Illinois Association of School Boards, our district attorney, and as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Hill,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Marzen,
Yes.
Charlo, yes, Gotchall,
Yes.
Haig,
yes,
Duran.
Yes.
All right, motion is approved. Item E, which I believe is our final action item. No, not our final, almost. Item E is personnel report. This month's personnel report includes one resignation, Alyssa Lucas, a wellness person at the middle school, effective December 18th for personal reasons. It includes a non-licensed new hire in Marilyn Rodriguez, a teaching assistant at the elementary school, effective December 1st, replacing, it says per updated staffing plan of 11/10 of 20 at $15 an hour.
That's one of our additional TAs that we requested.
Approved. We talked about that last time, I think, right? Yeah. Dan Williams, the PE teacher, is requesting an FMLA leave from the middle school, effective January 1st for about 3 weeks. And then an open position / carryover, Kristen Armstrong, a teaching assistant at the middle school, effective September 30th for family reasons. Questions, comments, concerns, discussion about that?
There was an update to the personnel report.
Oh, is this not it? Did I
Um,
miss one?
Go ahead, Lisa.
We have a retirement as well that we included.
Oh, I printed it out too soon. Sorry.
I think it was just added yesterday. I apologize for that. Rana Spiewak at LBES will be retiring effective January of 2020.
Thanks for catching that. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Shelley.
One other quick thing. I think there may be some effective dates that are incorrect. There's a 1/1/20 effective date.
Oh, that's the
Date.
yeah, probably 21.
Dan Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Dan.
Thank you. Good catch.
We will. Thanks, Andy. We'll update.
Sure. May I have a motion to approve the December 8th, 2020 personnel report as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Barry,
Yes.
Marzen,
Yes.
Charlo, yes, Gotchall,
Yes.
Haig,
Yes,
Duran,
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
The motion is approved. So now our final action item is the consent agenda. This month's consent agenda includes the open session meeting minutes from the November 10th, 2020 special report, special Board of Education meeting, the treasurer's report, the impress report, the bills report, the P card report, and the resolution to transfer funds from contingency for COVID purposes. Is there any one of those items that somebody would like pulled out to discuss separately and not voted on in the consent agenda? Not hearing any. May I have a motion to approve the December 8th, 2020 consent agenda as presented by the administration?
So
so
moved.
moved. Second,
Roll call vote, please.
Charlo, yes, Gotchall,
Yes.
Haig,
yes,
Duran,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Marzen.
Yes.
The motion is approved. Item 10, FOIA requests. We did get several, but they look pretty standard. If anybody's interested in digging into them, they are in the board packet. Public comments. Would anybody from our massive viewing audience have their hand raised? I don't see any. Anything written on our Google Doc, written
Nothing.
comments? So, not hearing any public comments. Anybody on the board like to say anything before we wrap this up? Thank you for all your hard work, everybody. We appreciate it. May I have a motion to adjourn at 8:39 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Hill,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Marzen,
Yes.
Charlo, yes, Gotchall,
Yes.
Haig.
no, this is too
Sure.
much fun.
What would you like to say about it, Rich?
I've said my piece.
Okay, good. And Andy Duran,
Yes.
That it?
that's
Motion's
everybody.
approved. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Done a good job.
Happy holidays.
See you in the new year.